I stood frozen in the crowded airport terminal, my arms wrapped around a complete stranger. His expensive cologne filled my senses as horrified realization washed over me. This wasn't my brother. The strong, unfamiliar arms that had instinctively returned my embrace now stiffened. I had hugged the wrong man in front of hundreds of people, and not just any man. Based on the shocked expressions of those around us and the suddenly appearing security personnel, someone important. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slowly pulled away, my eyes traveling up to meet piercing dark eyes that studied me with intense curiosity, rather than the anger I expected. Intricate tattoos peeked out from his collar, snaking up his neck in elaborate patterns that spoke of a dangerous world I knew nothing about. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the airport announcements. My cheeks burned with embarrassment as I took a step back, clutching my worn handbag to my chest like a shield. "I thought you were my brother. You're wearing the same jacket he has." The man, tall with broad shoulders and an air of authority that seemed to command the space around him, didn't immediately respond. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. More tattoos decorated his hands, intricate designs that disappeared beneath the sleeves of his jacket. People were staring. Some had phones raised, undoubtedly capturing my humiliation for social media. I wished the polished airport floor would open up and swallow me whole. "Miss," one of the security guards stepped forward, his tone stern. "Step away from Mr. Kang, please." Mr. Kang. The name clicked in my mind immediately. Jin Kang, the Korean billionaire whose face occasionally graced magazine covers and news reports, though always with whispers attached. The man who had transformed what some called a criminal empire into one of the world's most powerful business conglomerates. The tattoos weren't just decoration, they were markers of his past, remnants of a world he'd supposedly left behind. And I had just thrown my arms around him in a very public display of mistaken identity. Have you ever made a mistake so mortifying that you wanted the ground to swallow you whole? Well, imagine hugging a dangerous billionaire in front of hundreds of people, and you'll understand exactly how I felt in that moment. "It's all right," Jin Kang finally spoke, his voice surprisingly gentle with a slight accent as he raised a hand to halt the approaching security. "Simple mistake." I nodded gratefully, still unable to meet his eyes. "I'm really sorry. My brother said he'd be wearing a blue jacket, and from behind you looked just like him." A small smile played at the corner of his mouth. "No harm done." He paused, then added, "Though I don't think I've ever been greeted quite so enthusiastically at an airport before." Before I could respond, a voice called out from behind me. "Natalie, there you are." I turned to see my actual brother, Samuel, pushing through the crowd, indeed, wearing a similar blue jacket. The resemblance from behind was clear, though Samuel was several inches shorter than the billionaire and decidedly less intimidating. "I see you've been making friends," Samuel joked as he approached, though his smile faltered when he noticed the security personnel and the whispers spreading through the crowd. "Wrong person," I managed to say, wishing I could disappear. Jin Kang watched the interaction with interest, his eyes never leaving my face. Something about me had caught his attention. My genuine embarrassment, perhaps, or the warm sincerity in my eyes when I'd looked up at him. In a world where people approached him only for what they could gain, or feared him for what he could do, my mistake was refreshingly authentic. "Mr. Kang, your car is waiting," his assistant reminded him, appearing at his side with practiced efficiency. Jin nodded but hesitated before turning to leave. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, offering it to me with a casual gesture that belied the unusual nature of his action. "In case you ever need to hug the right person," he said with a slight smile, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I took the card automatically, my fingers brushing against his. For a moment, time seemed to slow as our eyes met again. Then Samuel tugged at my arm, breaking the connection. "Come on, sis. Mom's waiting in the car." As I allowed myself to be led away, I couldn't help glancing back over my shoulder. Jin Kang still stood watching me, an unreadable expression on his face. She quickly looked away, tucking the business card into my pocket without examining it. What would a billionaire, especially one with his reputation, want with someone like me? It was probably just a polite gesture, nothing more. But as I walked away with my brother, listening to him tease me about assaulting a billionaire, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. What I didn't know was that Jin Kang was thinking the same thing, watching me disappear into the crowd and wondering for the first time in years what it might be like to know someone who saw him as a person, rather than a fortune or a threat. "Who was that?" his assistant asked, scanning her tablet as they walked toward the exit. Jin shook his head slightly. "I have no idea," he replied, "but I'd like to find out." The airport continued its busy rhythm around them, travelers rushing to destinations, announcements blaring overhead, reunions and departures happening in every corner. But for two people who had briefly connected in the most unexpected way, the world had shifted slightly on its axis. Neither knew what would come next, but both felt the pull of possibility, a chance encounter that might lead somewhere neither had imagined possible. And if you're enjoying this story of an unexpected connection that defied all odds, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens next, and share this with someone who believes in second chances and unlikely love stories. Your support helps this community grow and brings more stories like this to life. I stared out the window of the cramped apartment I shared with my mother and brother, watching rain streak down the glass. 3 days had passed since the airport incident, but the memory still made my stomach tighten with embarrassment. My phone buzzed on the small table beside me. Another notification from social media where a blurry video of me hugging Jin Kang had gone viral. "Airport lady mistakes billionaire for brother," read one headline. I hadn't even known someone was filming. "You're famous now," Samuel teased, peering over my shoulder at the phone. I sighed and turned the phone face down. Not the kind of famous I'd ever want to be. Our mother, Esther Johnson, looked up from the pile of medical bills she was sorting through. Despite working 2 jobs as a nurse's aide, making ends meet had become increasingly difficult since her diagnosis. The cancer treatments had drained our savings, and I had put my college education on hold to help with expenses. "At least you gave people something to smile about," Esther said kindly. "And that man, Mr. Kang, he seemed nice about it." "He was," I admitted, remembering the business card still tucked in my wallet. I hadn't told my family about it, knowing they would read too much into the gesture. "It was nothing," I reminded myself, "just a polite response to an awkward situation." "Did you hear back about that job at the community center?" Esther asked, changing the subject. I shook my head. "They said they'd call by the end of the week. The pay isn't great, but it's close to home, and the hours would let me still help with your appointments." Samuel's expression darkened. "You shouldn't have to put your life on hold for us, Natalie. You were supposed to be finishing your teaching degree this year." "Family comes first," I replied simply. It was the value our mother had instilled in us since childhood. After our father had abandoned the family when I was just 10, the 3 of us had formed an unbreakable bond. We took care of each other. Across town in a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Jin Kang sat in his home office, unable to focus on the acquisition proposal on his screen. His thoughts kept drifting to the woman from the airport. His security team had identified her from the viral video. Natalie Johnson, 26 years old, former education student who had withdrawn from university last year, currently working part-time at a local grocery store while caring for her mother, who had been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Jin rubbed his temples, his tattooed fingers tracing absent patterns as he wondered why he couldn't get her out of his mind. Perhaps it was the genuine warmth in her embrace, even if it hadn't been meant for him. In his world of calculated business moves, dangerous allies, and people who approached him only for his wealth or feared him for his power, that moment of mistaken authenticity had felt like a breath of fresh air. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his sister, Minji. "Have you seen it?" she asked without preamble. "Seen what?" "The video. You getting tackle-hugged by some random woman at the airport? It's everywhere." Jin sighed. "Yes, I've seen it. It was a simple mistake. Well, the internet is going crazy with it. Some are calling it a setup, others a meet-cute straight out of a romance movie." Minji paused. "She was pretty, though, in a natural way." "It was nothing," Jin insisted, though even he could hear the lack of conviction in his voice. Minji replied, clearly unconvinced. "When was the last time you gave your personal business card to nothing?" Jin frowned. "How did you know about that?" "Your security detail talks to my security detail. Perks of being a Kang sibling." Minji's tone turned serious. "Listen, Jin, since Ji-yeon left, you've buried yourself in work. Maybe this is the universe giving you a nudge." Jin thought of his ex-fiancée, who had ultimately admitted she'd been more in love with his fortune than with him, terrified of his past, and ambitious enough to overlook it for the lifestyle he could provide. The betrayal still stung even 2 years later. The universe should mind its own business, he muttered. Minji laughed. Well, if you're not interested, at least invite her to the charity gala next week. Good publicity? The billionaire and the airport hugger reunited. The press would eat it up, and donations would soar. After hanging up, Jin found himself staring at the search results for Natalie Johnson again. Her social media presence was minimal, but he found a few photos. Unlike the carefully curated images that filled his social feeds, hers were simple snapshots of real life. Helping at a community garden, celebrating her brother's birthday, a hospital selfie with her mother, both of them smiling despite the circumstances. Before he could talk himself out of it, Jin picked up his phone and dialed a number. James, I need you to deliver something for me. The next morning, I was leaving for my early shift at the grocery store when I nearly tripped over a package at our apartment door. My name was written on the elegant envelope attached. Curious. I brought it inside and called for my mother and brother. What is it? Samuel asked, still half asleep. I carefully opened the envelope first. Inside was a handwritten note in precise script. Miss Johnson, I hope this finds you well. I'm hosting a charity gala next Saturday, benefiting cancer research and treatment access. Given your family circumstances, I thought you might find it meaningful. The enclosed is merely a suggestion, not an expectation. I'd be honored if you would attend as my guest. Jin Kang. With trembling fingers, I opened the package to find a stunning but simple black dress, clearly expensive but not ostentatious. There was also a smaller envelope containing 3 tickets to the gala. Is that from who I think it is? Esther asked, her eyes wide. I nodded, speechless. Samuel whistled low. Seems like your airport mistake made quite an impression. I stared at the invitation, my mind racing. Was this pity, curiosity, or something else entirely? Whatever his motivation, I couldn't deny that a gala benefiting cancer research struck close to home. And despite the vast differences in our worlds, despite the whispers about his past, I found myself wanting to see Jin Kang again. What are you going to do? My mother asked gently. I took a deep breath. I think I'm going to a gala. The week leading up to the gala passed in a blur. Between my shifts at the grocery store and helping my mother with treatments, I barely had time to process what was happening. The dress Jin had sent fit perfectly, a simple but elegant black gown that made me feel both beautiful and comfortable, unlike the over-the-top designs I imagined wealthy women would wear. You look amazing, Esther said as I tried on the dress one evening. Like Cinderella going to the ball. I smiled but shook my head. This isn't a fairy tale, Mom. He probably just feels sorry for us after seeing that video go viral, or his PR team thought it would make a good story. Maybe, Samuel chimed in from the doorway, or maybe he was impressed by the woman who didn't treat him like a walking bank account or a dangerous criminal. I hadn't responded to the invitation directly. There had been no contact information included, just the tickets and the note. Part of me worried it might be some elaborate setup, that I would show up and be turned away at the door. But the bigger part of me couldn't stop thinking about those few moments at the airport, the intensity in Jin's dark eyes when he'd looked at me, the intricate tattoos that hinted at a past I couldn't begin to understand. Across town, Jin was finalizing details for the gala, an annual event that usually bored him despite its importance. This year felt different. Every decision from the menu to the music seemed to matter more. He found himself wondering what Natalie might think of each choice. The guest list is confirmed, his assistant reported. Though we haven't received an RSVP from Ms. Johnson. She'll come, Jin said with more confidence than he felt. He had deliberately not included his number or email, wanting to give her space to decide without pressure. But now he wondered if that had been a mistake. His sister Minji called that evening. Tell me you didn't send a dress to airport girl, she said when he answered. Hello to you too, Jin replied dryly. Jin, sending expensive gifts to strangers is weird, even billionaire weird, especially for someone with your reputation. It wasn't expensive, he lied. The dress had been custom-made in record time by a designer friend, though he'd requested it be elegant rather than extravagant. And the gala benefits cancer research. Her mother has cancer. Minji was silent for a moment. You researched her? Not extensively, Jin defended himself, though the dossier his security team had compiled sat on his desk. I just wanted to know who I was inviting. Uh-huh. Minji didn't sound convinced. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting her, and watching how Ji-yeon reacts when she sees you've moved on. Jin froze. Ji-yeon is coming? She's dating Senator Park's son now. Remember. The Parks always attend your galas? Minji paused. You didn't know? Jin had forgotten completely. The thought of his ex-fiancée attending had never crossed his mind, which was strange in itself. Usually, the possibility of seeing Ji-yeon again would have dominated his thoughts before an event. It doesn't matter, he said finally. This isn't about Ji-yeon. So it is about Airport Girl, Minji said triumphantly. Her name is Natalie, Jin corrected automatically, then sighed at his sister's delighted laugh. The night of the gala arrived. I stood in front of the small bathroom mirror, applying the last touches of my minimal makeup. My mother was too exhausted from her treatment that day to attend, but had insisted that Samuel and I go without her. You both deserve a night out, she had said. And I want to hear every detail when you get back. Samuel knocked on the door. Car's here, he called. Car. I opened the door in surprise. I thought we were taking the bus. Samuel shrugged, looking uncomfortable in the rented suit we had splurged on. Apparently not. There's a driver downstairs saying Mr. Kang sent him. A sleek black car waited outside our apartment building, drawing curious looks from neighbors. The driver opened the door for us with a polite nod, and I slid into the luxurious interior, feeling increasingly out of place. You okay? Samuel asked as we drove through the city toward the upscale hotel hosting the event. I nodded, though my stomach was in knots. Just nervous. What am I even doing, Sam? We don't belong in this world. Samuel took my hand. You belong anywhere you want to be, sis. And besides, he added with a grin, I'm dying to see how rich people party. Do you think they have solid gold ice sculptures? I laughed despite my nerves. I'm guessing not. But whatever happens tonight, promise me we'll laugh about it someday. Deal, Samuel agreed as the car pulled up to a red carpet lined with photographers. My heart sank. I hadn't expected this level of publicity, but before I could panic, the driver circled to a side entrance away from the cameras. Mr. Kang thought you might prefer this entrance, Miss Johnson, he explained, opening the door. Touched by the consideration, I felt some of my tension ease. Perhaps Jin Kang understood more than I had given him credit for. Inside, the ballroom was transformed into an elegant wonderland of subtle lighting and tasteful decorations. Hundreds of guests in formal wear mingled, the quiet hum of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter. I clutched my small purse, feeling overwhelmed. Name, please? Asked the attendant at the entrance. Natalie Johnson, I replied hesitantly. And Samuel Johnson. The attendant's expression changed immediately. Miss Johnson, of course. Mr. Kang mentioned you would be coming. Please follow me. As we were led through the crowd, I felt eyes turning toward us, whispers following in our wake. I caught snippets. That's her, from the airport. Kang's mystery woman. And then the crowd seemed to part. And there he was. Jin Kang, even more imposing in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that somehow made the tattoos visible at his collar and wrists seem even more striking, stood talking with a small group. When his eyes found mine, his conversation stopped mid-sentence. For a moment, we simply looked at each other across the room, and I felt that same strange connection I had experienced at the airport. Then Jin excused himself from his group and walked toward me, his gaze never leaving my face. The whispers around us grew louder, but I barely noticed. In that moment, despite all the differences in our lives, despite the improbability of our meeting, despite the dangerous reputation that preceded him, something felt undeniably right. You came, Jin said simply when he reached me. I nodded, finding my voice. Thank you for the invitation, and the dress. It suits you, he replied, his eyes warming as he took in my appearance. Then he turned to Samuel, extending his hand. You must be the brother I was mistaken for. Samuel grinned as they shook hands. The one and only. Thanks for inviting us, man. Wild party. Jin smiled, some of his formality dropping away. It's usually quite boring, actually, but I'm hoping this year might be different. His eyes returned to me as he spoke. Before I could respond, a photographer approached. Mr. Kang, could we get a photo? Jin looked at me questioningly. Only if you're comfortable, he said quietly. I hesitated, then nodded. As Jin stood beside me, his hand lightly touching the small of my back, I realized something surprising. Despite the luxury surrounding us and the eyes watching our every move, despite knowing the whispers about his past, I felt strangely at ease in his presence. The camera flashed, capturing the moment. The billionaire with the dangerous reputation and the woman who had hugged him by mistake, standing together as if they belonged that way. Neither could have guessed how that single photograph would change both our lives. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the ballroom as I stood beside Jin, trying not to feel overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding us. After the photographs, he had introduced Samuel and me to a dizzying number of people. Business associates, philanthropists, and celebrities, whose names I recognized from magazines and television. "Everyone's staring," I whispered to Jin during a brief moment alone. "Not at the decorations, I'm afraid," he replied with a small smile. "You've caused quite a stir." "I'm sorry if I'm embarrassing you," I said, suddenly self-conscious again. Jin looked genuinely surprised. "Embarrassing me? Natalie, you're the most authentic person in this room. Do you know how refreshing that is?" He hesitated, then added more quietly. "In my world, people wear masks. They say what they think I want to hear, or they fear what I might do. You're different." Before I could respond, a striking woman in a designer gown approached them, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Jin, darling," she said, air kissing his cheek. "The gala is wonderful as always." "Thank you, Ji-yeon," Jin replied, his tone polite but cooler than I had heard him speak to anyone else. "Natalie, this is Ji-yeon Park. Ji-yeon, this is Natalie Johnson." Recognition flickered in Ji-yeon's eyes. The airport hugger. How quaint. She looked me up and down with barely disguised assessment. "That's a lovely dress. Off the rack?" "Actually, it was a gift," I replied honestly, missing the implication. "From Jin, I presume." Ji-yeon raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. He always did have excellent taste in some things. The tension between them was palpable, and I suddenly understood. This woman had history with Jin. Romantic history, based on the proprietary way she still looked at him. "If you'll excuse me," I said, "I should check on my brother." I slipped away before either could respond, needing a moment to collect myself. I found Samuel by the elaborate buffet, happily filling a plate. "Sis, you have to try these little pastry things. I don't even know what's in them, but they're amazing." I smiled despite my discomfort. "Having fun? Are you kidding? This is like being in a movie." Samuel lowered his voice. "I met the star of that action series I like. Got a selfie and everything." His expression grew more serious. "How about you? Your billionaire seems pretty into you." "He's not my billionaire," I corrected automatically. "And I just met his ex, I think. She's exactly what you'd expect. Beautiful, sophisticated, and clearly still interested in him." Samuel shrugged. "Yeah, but he invited you here, not her." Across the room, Jin was extracting himself from Ji-yeon's company as politely as possible. "She's quite pretty, in a simple way," Ji-yeon was saying. "But Jin, be realistic. What could you possibly have in common with someone like her? Especially given your background." "You don't know her," Jin replied, his jaw tight. "Neither do you," Ji-yeon countered. "One viral moment doesn't make a relationship. People are already talking, wondering if this is some sort of publicity stunt. Or worse, if you're reverting to old patterns." "I don't care what people think," Jin said. Though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. In his position, with his past, public perception mattered whether he liked it or not. "Your board of directors might," Ji-yeon reminded him. "Remember how they reacted when you wanted to redirect funds to that inner-city education project? They're traditionalists, Jin. They expect certain things from someone trying to leave his past behind." Jin didn't respond immediately, his eyes searching the crowd until he spotted Natalie with her brother. Something in his expression softened. "If you'll excuse me," he said to Ji-yeon, already moving away. As he approached Natalie and Samuel, Jin felt a strange lightness he hadn't experienced in years. Despite the whispers and stares, despite Ji-yeon's warnings and his own reservations about bringing someone from such a different world into his complicated life, he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward this woman. "Rescued you from the ex, huh?" Samuel said when Jin joined them, earning an elbow from his sister. "Samuel," I protested. Jin laughed, genuinely amused. "It's all right. And yes, I suppose you could say that." "She's pretty," Samuel continued, ignoring my warning look. "Like scary pretty. The kind that might poison your drink if you break up with her." This time, Jin's laugh was louder, drawing attention from nearby guests. "Your brother is refreshingly direct," he told me. "Embarrassingly direct," I corrected, But I was smiling too. The orchestra began playing a waltz, and couples moved to the dance floor. Jin held out his hand to me. Would you dance with me? I hesitated. I don't know how to waltz. I'll teach you, he offered. It's easier than it looks. After a moment's hesitation, I placed my hand in his, allowing him to lead me to the dance floor. As his hand settled on my waist and he began guiding me through the steps, I felt as though everyone in the room was watching us, which I realized they probably were. Ignore them, Jin said softly, as if reading my thoughts. Just focus on me. I looked up into his eyes, finding them warm and reassuring. Gradually, I relaxed into the dance, following his lead with increasing confidence. You're a natural, he told me as we moved around the floor. Or you're just a good teacher, I replied, smiling. Tell me something about yourself, Jin said. Something I wouldn't find in a news story or social media. I considered the question. I wanted to be a teacher, elementary school. I was halfway through my degree when Mom got sick. And you put it on hold to take care of her, Jin filled in. It wasn't a question, I nodded. Family comes first. Mom raised us alone after our dad left. She worked so hard to give us opportunities. When she needed us, there was no question. You could go back, Jin suggested. Finish your degree someday. Someday, I agreed. When Mom is better and we're more financially stable. I changed the subject, not wanting to dwell on the uncertainty of both those conditions. What about you? Tell me something I wouldn't read in a business magazine. Jin was quiet for a moment, thinking. I hate these events, he finally said. I host them because they raise money for good causes, but I usually count the minutes until I can leave. And tonight? I asked. His eyes met mine again. Tonight, I'm exactly where I want to be. The directness of his gaze made my heart beat faster. This made no sense. We were from completely different worlds, had met by accident just over a week ago, and he carried a reputation that should have made me run the other direction. And yet, as we danced among the city's elite, something was growing between us that neither could easily dismiss. As the evening progressed, I found myself genuinely enjoying Jin's company. Behind the public persona of the serious businessman with the dangerous past was a man with a dry sense of humor, a passion for the educational charities his foundation supported, and a thoughtfulness I hadn't expected. During a break in the dancing, Jin led me to a quieter corner of the ballroom. How is your mother's treatment going? He asked. The question caught me off guard. It's difficult, I admitted. The doctors are optimistic, but the side effects are hard on her, and the bills keep coming. Jin nodded, understanding in his eyes. The hospital where she's being treated. It's Memorial, right? Yes, I replied, surprised. How did you know? Jin looked slightly uncomfortable. I may have done some research before inviting you tonight. I hope that doesn't seem intrusive. In another context, it might have, but I appreciated his honesty. It's okay. And yes, she's at Memorial. They have a good oncology department, but even with insurance, the costs are overwhelming. Memorial is one of the hospitals that receives funding from tonight's gala, Jin told me, specifically for patients who need financial assistance with cancer treatments. My eyes widened slightly. I didn't know that. That's why I thought you might find the event meaningful, Jin explained. Though I had other reasons for wanting you here, he added quietly. Their conversation was interrupted by the announcement that the fundraising portion of the evening was beginning. Jin excused himself to take the stage, delivering a brief but powerful speech about the importance of accessible healthcare and cancer research. Watching him address the crowd with confidence and genuine passion, I saw yet another side of Jin Kang. Not the billionaire from the headlines or the former criminal boss from the whispers, but a man using his influence to make a real difference. When the formal part of the evening concluded, Jin found me again. Would you like to get some air? He suggested. There's a garden terrace. The terrace was blessedly quiet after the noise of the ballroom, with fairy lights twinkling among the plants and the city skyline providing a spectacular backdrop. This is beautiful, I said, breathing in the cool night air. I come out here at every event, Jin admitted. It's my escape. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at the city lights. Then Jin turned to face me. Natalie, I have a confession to make, he said. What's that? Inviting you tonight wasn't just about the charity connection or good publicity, as my sister suggested. No? I asked softly. Jin shook his head. The truth is, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that day at the airport. About the way you looked at me, not as a billionaire or not with fear or calculation, but just as a person who happened to be wearing the same jacket as your brother? He smiled slightly at the memory. Do you know how rare that is in my life? I didn't know what to say. Part of me was thrilled at his words, while another part remained cautious. Jin, we barely know each other, and our lives are so different. I know, he interrupted gently. And I'm not suggesting we rush into anything, but I'd like the chance to know you better, if you're willing. Before I could respond, the terrace door opened and Samuel appeared. Sorry to interrupt, he said, looking between us, but Mom just called. She's not feeling well. Worry immediately replaced all other emotions for me. We need to go, I said to Jin. Of course, he replied without hesitation. I'll have my driver take you home right away. He took my hand. Natalie, thank you for coming tonight. Whatever happens next is entirely up to you, but I hope I'll see you again. As the car sped us back to our apartment, my mind was torn between concern for my mother and the unexpected turn my evening had taken. Jin Kang, one of the wealthiest men in the country, with a past most people feared and a present they envied, wanted to get to know me better. It seemed impossible, like something from a storybook, rather than real life. He likes you, Samuel said simply as we neared home. Like really likes you. It's complicated, I replied. Samuel shrugged. Most good things are. As we rushed into our apartment to check on our mother, I pushed thoughts of Jin aside. Family came first. That had always been my reality, but for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder if there might be room in my life for something more, something unexpected and potentially dangerous, but also undeniably compelling. The morning after the gala, I woke early, my mind still processing the events of the previous night. My mother had been experiencing severe nausea from her latest treatment, but was resting comfortably now. I made coffee and checked my phone, nearly dropping it when I saw the notifications. The photo of me dancing with Jin had gone viral overnight. Airport hugger and billionaire, the romance we didn't know we needed, read one headline. Another proclaimed, Jin Kang's mystery woman identified, the heartwarming story behind their meeting. Oh no, I murmured, scrolling through the stories. Most were speculative, painting our connection as everything from a fairy tale romance to a calculated publicity stunt. Some mentioned Jin's past, questioning whether someone with his history could ever truly leave that world behind. My phone rang, an unknown number. Hesitantly, I answered. Natalie Johnson? A woman's crisp voice asked. Yes? This is Vanessa Wright from Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on our show to discuss your relationship with Jin Kang. There is no relationship, I interrupted, my heart racing. I'm sorry, but I have no comment. I hung up, only for the phone to ring again moments later with another media request. After the fifth call, I turned off my phone. Samuel emerged from his room, looking bleary-eyed. What's with all the calls? He asked. I showed him the news stories. It's crazy. Why do people care so much about this? Because it's like a movie, Samuel replied simply. Poor girl meets dangerous billionaire by accident. People eat that stuff up. Well, I don't want to be in their movie, I said firmly. I needed to check on my mother and get to my shift at the grocery store, not deal with media interest in a non-existent romance. But when I arrived at work, I found several reporters waiting. My manager pulled me aside. I can't have this disruption, Natalie, he said apologetically. Maybe take a few days off until this blows over. Feeling both angry and helpless, I left through the back entrance. I needed to talk to Jin. This was affecting my real life now. But I had no way to contact him directly. I'd never even looked at the business card he'd given me at the airport, assuming it would just have his company's general information. Digging through my wallet, I finally found it. To my surprise, a personal cell number was handwritten on the back with a simple note, if you ever want to reach me directly. Meanwhile, Jin was in his office dealing with his own media storm. His assistant had compiled a list of interview requests and news stories, most of which he declined to comment on. His phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. It's Natalie. We need to talk about this media situation. Reporters are at my workplace, and I've basically been told not to come in. This is affecting my real life. Jin's response was immediate. I'm so sorry. Where are you now? Can I send a car? I hesitated before replying. I'm at the coffee shop 2 blocks from my apartment, but I don't want more attention. I understand. I'll come to you. Just me. No security. Give me 30 minutes. Exactly 30 minutes later, Jin walked into the small coffee shop. He wore jeans and a simple jacket pulled low, a far cry from the polished businessman of the previous night. The tattoos on his hands were visible, though, marking him as different even in casual clothes. Despite the simple disguise, I recognized him immediately. He slid into the seat across from me, concern evident in his eyes. "I'm so sorry about this," he said before I could speak. "I should have anticipated the media reaction better." "It's not your fault," I sighed. "I knew there would be attention when I agreed to attend the gala. I just didn't expect it to affect my job." "They asked you not to come in?" I nodded. "My manager said to take a few days off until it blows over. But I need those hours, Jin. Mom's medical bills don't pay themselves." Jin was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking. "The media cycle moves quickly. This will fade in a few days when something new catches their attention." He hesitated, then added, "But there is something we could do to speed that process." "What's that?" "Give them what they want. One interview together to set the record straight. We say we met by chance. I invited you to the gala because of your mother's connection to the cause, and we're getting to know each other as friends. No fairy tale romance, no scandal, just the simple truth." I considered this. Would that really help? It might. Once there's an official story, many outlets will move on. He reached across the table, hesitantly taking my hand. "But I want to be clear about something. While we would be downplaying things for the media, I meant what I said last night. I do want to get to know you better." The warmth of his hand on mine, the intricate tattoos a reminder of his complicated past, was distracting. But I forced myself to think practically. Even if this media attention dies down, how would that even work? Your life and mine are completely different. Your past. The things people say about you. "Different doesn't mean incompatible," Jin replied. "And my past is exactly that. Past. At least give us a chance to find out." Before I could answer, my phone rang, my mother's ringtone. I answered immediately, my expression changing to one of alarm as I listened. "I'll be right there," I said, hanging up. "Mom's being taken to the hospital. Her fever is dangerously high." Jin stood without hesitation. "My car is outside, let's go." During the ride to the hospital, I barely spoke, my thoughts entirely focused on my mother. Jin respected my silence, simply offering his presence as support. When we arrived, he stayed in the background as Samuel and I talked to the doctors. The news wasn't good. The infection was serious, a common but dangerous complication for patients with weakened immune systems from chemotherapy. Esther Johnson was admitted immediately, leaving Samuel and me to wait anxiously for updates. Hours passed. Jin quietly arranged for food to be delivered to the waiting room and made some calls, ensuring that Esther would receive the hospital's best care. As night fell, Samuel finally convinced me to go home and rest, promising to call if there was any change. Jin insisted on driving me. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he said as we approached my apartment building. "Is there a friend I could call for you?" I shook my head. "Most of my close friends have moved away for jobs or graduate school. It's mainly been just family since Mom got sick." I looked at him, vulnerability clear in my eyes. Would you stay for a while? Just until I fall asleep?" Jin nodded without hesitation. "Of course." Inside the small apartment, I was suddenly self-conscious of the shabby furniture and peeling paint, such a contrast to the luxury Jin was accustomed to. But if he noticed, he gave no indication, instead asking practical questions about what I needed. "Just sit with me?" I requested, settling onto the worn couch. Jin joined me, and after a moment's hesitation, put his arm around my shoulders. I leaned into him, drawing comfort from his solid presence, the faint scent of his cologne mixing with something else, something that reminded me he was more than just a billionaire playing at normalcy. "She has to be okay," I whispered. "I can't lose her." "The doctors seemed confident once they start the antibiotics," Jin reassured me, "and Memorial has an excellent infectious disease team." They sat in silence for a while, until I eventually drifted into an exhausted sleep against his shoulder. Jin carefully adjusted my position so I would be comfortable, then gently covered me with the throw blanket from the couch. Instead of leaving, he settled into a nearby chair, not wanting me to wake alone if I received news from the hospital. In the quiet darkness, Jin studied my sleeping face, his tattooed hands clasped together. How strange that this woman he'd met by chance had so quickly become important to him. His phone vibrated with messages from his assistant about tomorrow's meetings, but for once, Jin found he didn't care about work deadlines or business obligations. All that mattered was being here, offering what comfort he could to someone who had genuinely touched his heart. Morning came with better news. Samuel called to report that our mother's fever had broken, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic. I woke to find Jin still there, having dozed off in the uncomfortable chair. "You stayed," I said, surprised and touched. Jin rubbed his neck, stiff from the awkward sleeping position. "I didn't want you to be alone if there was bad news." He checked his watch. "I have a board meeting at 9, but I can cancel." "No," I interrupted. "You've done more than enough. Go to your meeting. I need to get to the hospital anyway." As he stood to leave, Jin turned to me. "Natalie, about the interview idea. You don't have to decide now. Your mother is the priority. But if you want my help managing this situation, just say the word." I nodded gratefully. "Thank you. For everything." After he left, I took a quick shower and prepared to head to the hospital. As I was gathering my things, there was a knock at the door. Thinking Jin had forgotten something, I opened it without checking first. Instead of Jin, I found myself face to face with Ji-yeon Park. "Miss Johnson?" Ji-yeon said coolly. "May I come in? I believe we need to talk." Stunned, I stepped aside. Ji-yeon entered, her designer outfit and perfect appearance making the modest apartment seem even shabbier. "I'll be brief," Ji-yeon said, declining to sit. "I saw Jin leaving your building this morning. Things appear to be moving quickly between you two." "It's not what you think," I began, but Ji-yeon raised a hand to stop me. "What I think doesn't matter, but what the public thinks, what Jin's business associates and board members think, that matters a great deal." Ji-yeon's expression softened slightly. "Look, I don't doubt that you're a nice person caught up in an unexpected situation, but you need to understand the reality of Jin's world." "And what's that?" I asked, my voice steady despite my discomfort. "His position comes with expectations and responsibilities. The company he built employs thousands of people. His decisions affect lives and livelihoods. And his past?" Ji-yeon paused. "Do you know why our engagement ended?" I shook my head. "Because I chose my career over the role of redemption partner. I wasn't willing to spend my life proving to the world that Jin Kang had truly left his criminal past behind." Ji-yeon looked directly at me. "Could you give up your dreams of teaching to attend board member dinners and charity galas? Could you handle the constant scrutiny, the whispers about his tattoos, his past, the opinions of people who will judge everything from your clothes to your background, to whether you're naive enough to trust someone with his history?" "I don't know," I admitted honestly. "I hadn't thought that far ahead." "Exactly," Ji-yeon nodded. "And Jin hasn't either. He's infatuated with the novelty of someone who isn't part of his usual circle, someone who doesn't fear him. But novelty wears off, and reality sets in." She moved toward the door. "I'm not saying this to be cruel. I'm saying it because someone should give you the full picture before you or Jin get any more invested in something that can't last." After Ji-yeon left, I sat down heavily, my mind racing. Had I been naive to think there could be anything real between Jin and me? Our worlds were so different. And as Ji-yeon had pointed out, a relationship would mean navigating much more than just personal compatibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Jin. "How's your mother this morning? Can I do anything?" I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. I needed time to think, to focus on my mother's recovery without the complications of whatever was happening with Jin, but I also couldn't deny the connection I felt with him or the kindness he had shown my family, despite his fearsome reputation. Finally, I replied, "Mom's doing better, heading to the hospital now. Thank you for last night, but I think I need some space to process everything. My family has to be my priority right now." Jin's response came quickly. "I understand completely. Take all the time you need. I'm here if you need anything at all." The simple message brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Despite Ji-yeon's warnings and my own doubts, there was something about Jin Kang that continued to surprise me, a genuine thoughtfulness behind the dangerous facade that I couldn't easily dismiss. As I headed to the hospital, I pushed thoughts of Jin aside. My mother needed my full attention now. Whatever was happening between Jin and me would have to wait. What I didn't know was that Jin had already set certain plans in motion. Plans that would intersect with my life in ways I couldn't imagine, for better or worse. A week passed. Esther Johnson's condition improved enough for her to return home, though she remained weak from both the infection and her ongoing cancer treatments. I took on additional responsibilities, coordinating my mother's care while trying to find a new job after the grocery store had permanently replaced me. Through it all, Jin kept his distance as I had requested, sending only occasional brief messages to check on Esther's recovery. Each time, I responded politely but briefly, still uncertain about what I wanted. "You should talk to him," Samuel told me one evening as we shared a simple dinner. "He clearly cares." "It's complicated," I sighed. "After what Ji-yeon said?" "You're letting his ex-fiancée make your decisions?" Samuel raised an eyebrow. "The same woman who has every reason to keep him single or steer him back to her?" I shook my head. "It's not that simple. The things she said made sense. Our worlds are completely different. His past? So what?" Samuel leaned forward. "Sis, you've put your whole life on hold to take care of Mom and me. For once, something unexpected and potentially amazing has happened to you. Don't talk yourself out of it without at least giving it a chance." Before I could respond, there was a knock at our door. Samuel answered it, returning with a formal-looking envelope. "It's for you," he said, handing it to me. "From Memorial Hospital." Frowning, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter stating that an anonymous donor had paid all of my mother's outstanding medical bills and established a fund to cover her remaining treatments and medications. The letter estimated the total value at over $100,000. "Oh my God," I whispered, showing the letter to Samuel. "It has to be Jin," Samuel said immediately. I nodded slowly. It couldn't be anyone else. But instead of feeling grateful, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Appreciation, yes, but also discomfort, and a touch of anger. While the financial relief was enormous, I hadn't asked for this kind of help. It felt like Jin was trying to solve my problems with money, something I had specifically wanted to avoid. My phone buzzed with a text from Jin. "Can we talk? I'm in your neighborhood." I hesitated, then replied, "Meet me at the park on the corner in 15 minutes. The small neighborhood park was quiet in the evening, with just a few people walking dogs or sitting on benches. I spotted Jin immediately, again dressed casually in jeans and a simple sweater, though his tattooed hands were impossible to hide. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as I approached. "Did you pay my mother's medical bills?" I asked directly, skipping any greeting. Jin met my gaze steadily. "Yes." "Why didn't you ask me first?" "Would you have accepted if I had?" I hesitated. "Probably not," I admitted. "That's why." Jin gestured to a nearby bench, and we both sat. "Natalie, I have more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. Much of it earned through means I'm not proud of, but it's mine now. Using some of it to help your mother get the treatment she needs without the added stress of financial burden, that seems like exactly what money should be for. A way to balance the scales, perhaps." "But it makes things uneven between us," I argued. "I can never repay you." "I don't want you to repay me," Jin said simply. "That's not how gifts work." I was quiet for a moment, struggling with my feelings. "Ji-yeon came to see me," I finally said, "the morning after you stayed." Jin's expression darkened. "She had no right to do that." "Maybe not, but she made some good points." I looked at him directly. "About how different our worlds are? About the expectations that come with your position? About your past?" "Ji-yeon has her own agenda," Jin replied. "Her perspective isn't objective." "But was she wrong?" I pressed. "Your life involves charity galas and board meetings and public scrutiny. People still whisper about your past, about the tattoos, about whether you can ever truly leave that world behind. Mine involves taking care of my family and trying to finish my teaching degree someday." Jin leaned back, considering his response. "Different doesn't mean incompatible," he repeated his earlier words. "Look, I'm not asking for lifelong commitments here. I'm just asking for a chance to see where this connection between us might lead." He smiled slightly. "Besides, I think I might benefit from having someone in my life who values things beyond corporate success and social status. Someone who sees me, not the reputation or the past." Despite my reservations, I found myself smiling back. "So, what are you suggesting?" "Let's just spend time together. No pressure, no public appearances, no media. Just us, getting to know each other as people." It sounded reasonable when he put it that way, and despite all my logical objections, I couldn't deny that I wanted to know him better too. "Okay," I agreed finally, "but I have conditions." "Name them," Jin said immediately. "First, no more anonymous donations or expensive gifts. I appreciate what you did for my mother more than I can express, but I need to know you respect my independence." Jin nodded. Fair enough. Second, I need this to stay private for now. No more viral photos or news stories. I'll do my best, Jin promised, though I can't control the media entirely. And third, I took a deep breath. I need honesty. Complete honesty. If at any point you realize this isn't working or it's too complicated, tell me immediately. I can definitely promise that, Jin said, as long as it goes both ways. They sealed their agreement with a handshake that lingered just a moment longer than necessary, both feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation about what might come next. Over the following weeks, Jin and I carved out time to get to know each other away from public scrutiny. We discovered shared interests in education reform and community development, and complementary differences that made our conversations engaging. I was impressed by Jin's strategic intelligence and genuine passion for giving back, perhaps to atone for his past, while he came to appreciate my practical wisdom and the compassionate way I approached teaching and family. We developed a routine of sorts. Jin would visit my apartment in the evenings, often bringing takeout food, but being careful not to always choose expensive restaurants. Sometimes we would simply talk for hours. Other times, we would help Samuel with college applications or sit with Esther, whose health was gradually improving. He's nothing like I expected, Esther confided to me one afternoon, while Jin was deep in conversation with Samuel about scholarship opportunities. When you first told me about him, I pictured someone different, dangerous, cold. The tattoos don't help, I admitted. Esther smiled. Actually, I think they're honest. He's not hiding who he was, but he's also showing who he's trying to be. The way he listens when people talk, the way he offers help without making you feel small for needing it. I had noticed the same things. The Jin Kang I was coming to know was thoughtful and often funny, with a dry wit I hadn't expected. He worked incredibly hard but spoke of his wealth as a responsibility rather than a privilege, perhaps because of how he'd initially acquired it. Most surprisingly, he seemed genuinely interested in my world, my plans to become a teacher, my ideas about education, my relationships with family and community. One evening, about a month into our private getting-to-know-you period, Jin invited me to his penthouse apartment. It was the first time I had seen where he lived. I feel like I should have brought white gloves for inspection, I joked as we rode the private elevator. Jin laughed. It's just an apartment, an unnecessarily large one, I'll admit. When the doors opened directly into his home, I gasped despite myself. Just an apartment was a dramatic understatement. The space was stunning. All clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and tasteful artwork. But what surprised me most was that it didn't feel cold or showy as I had expected. There were books everywhere, comfortable-looking furniture, family photos, and signs of actual living rather than just displaying wealth. This is beautiful, I said honestly. Thank you. Jin led me to the kitchen. I thought we could cook dinner together tonight instead of ordering in. I have all the ingredients for bibimbap if that sounds good. I smiled at this unexpected suggestion. I didn't know billionaires cooked. This one does. Not well, but enthusiastically. Jin rolled up his sleeves, revealing more of the intricate tattoos that covered his forearms. My grandmother insisted I learn. She said a man who can't feed himself isn't really independent, no matter how much money he has or how many people fear him. As we prepared the meal together, moving around the kitchen with surprising ease, I realized I was feeling something I hadn't expected, a sense of belonging. Despite the luxury surrounding us, despite the visible reminders of his past inked on his skin, there was something fundamentally normal about chopping vegetables and arguing about the right amount of gochujang to add to the sauce. Later, as we ate on his terrace overlooking the city lights, Jin grew more serious. There's something I need to tell you, he said. About work. I tensed slightly. What is it? I've been offered an opportunity to expand our educational technology division into several developing countries. It would mean creating affordable tablets and educational software for schools with limited resources. That sounds amazing, I said sincerely. It is, Jin agreed. It's exactly the kind of project I've wanted to pursue for years, a way to use what I've built for real good. But it would mean significant travel over the next few months. Africa, India, Southeast Asia. Oh, I said, understanding dawning. So you'd be gone? Jin nodded. 4 weeks at a time, most likely. And I wanted to discuss it with you before making a final decision. I was surprised. Why? I mean, it's your company. Your decision. Because whatever this is between us, Jin gestured between us, it's becoming important to me. And taking on this project would affect the time we could spend together, at least in the short term. The simple admission touched me deeply. No one besides my family had ever factored me into their major life decisions before. You should do it, I said without hesitation. It's an incredible opportunity to make a difference. Marcus studied my face. You're sure? Absolutely, I smiled. Besides, there's this amazing technology called video calls. I hear even billionaires use it sometimes. Jin laughed, relief evident in his expression. You're remarkable, you know that? Our eyes met across the table, and I felt that now familiar connection strengthening further. Whatever doubts I still harbored about our different worlds, I couldn't deny that something real was growing between us, something worth exploring despite the complications. As Jin drove me home later that evening, I found myself thinking about Ji-yeon's warnings. Yes, our worlds were different. Yes, a relationship between us would face challenges beyond the normal ones, but perhaps those differences could be strengths rather than obstacles, offering each of us perspectives we wouldn't have on our own. When we reached my apartment building, Jin walked me to the door as always. This time, however, instead of our usual friendly goodnight, I made a decision. Rising on tiptoes, I kissed him softly. Jin responded immediately, his tattooed arms encircling my waist as he returned the kiss with gentle intensity. When we finally broke apart, both were slightly breathless. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, Jin admitted. What took you so long? I teased. I was trying to be respectful of your boundaries, he replied honestly, and maybe a little afraid of ruining whatever this is by moving too quickly. I smiled, touched by his consideration. I think we're past that point now. As I went inside, I felt a new lightness in my step. The future remained uncertain, especially with Jin's upcoming travel. Our worlds were still vastly different, and his past would always be part of who he was. But for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that perhaps those weren't insurmountable obstacles, just challenges to navigate together. What I didn't realize was that our greatest challenge was yet to come, from a direction neither of us expected. Jin sat at the head of the long conference table listening as his chief financial officer finished presenting the quarterly results. Around him, the 12 members of his board of directors were making notes or studying the financial reports. It was a typical board meeting until the final agenda item. Now, regarding the proposed educational initiative in developing markets, the CFO concluded, we have concerns about the profit margins and return on investment. Jin leaned forward. As I've explained, this initiative isn't primarily about immediate ROI, it's about long-term market development and corporate responsibility. Harold Whitman, the oldest board member and a significant shareholder, cleared his throat. Jin, we've supported your philanthropic interests through the foundation, but this is a business decision that affects shareholder value. Education is a business opportunity, Jin countered. Creating affordable technology for underserved markets develops future consumers while addressing a critical need. Perhaps, Whitman conceded, but our analysis suggests the project as currently structured would barely break even for at least 5 years. That's difficult to justify to our investors. Other board members nodded in agreement. Jin felt frustration building but kept his expression neutral. There's another matter that's been raised, Whitman continued, his tone becoming more careful. The board has some concerns about recent personal developments and their potential impact on company perception. Jin stiffened. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Whitman looked uncomfortable but pressed on. Your relationship with Miss Johnson has generated significant media interest. While your personal life is your own affair, the board is concerned about potential complications. My relationship with Natalie has nothing to do with company operations, Jin said coldly. Under normal circumstances, I would agree, Whitman replied. But these aren't normal circumstances. Given your background, the media attention has been substantial. Some of our more conservative investment partners have expressed concerns. Concerns about what exactly? Jin demanded. Another board member, Elizabeth Chen, interjected more diplomatically. I think what Harold is trying to say is that there are perceptions to manage. Your past, while well documented, has been carefully managed. The optics of your current relationship have created certain narratives in the press. Some see it as redemptive, others as potentially problematic. It's becoming a distraction from our business goals. Jin looked around the table, reading the expressions of people he had worked with for years. Some appeared genuinely uncomfortable with the discussion. Others seemed to be assessing his reaction for signs of the man he used to be. "So, what exactly are you suggesting?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. Whitman exchanged glances with several other board members before responding. "We believe it would be in the company's best interest if you maintained a lower personal profile for the time being. Perhaps postpone any public appearances with Ms. Johnson until the media interest subsides." Jin felt a cold anger settling in his chest, the kind that used to lead to very different responses in his former life. "And if I don't agree? Then we would have serious reservations about approving the educational initiative as proposed," Whitman said bluntly. "The board needs to be confident that your focus is where it needs to be, that you've truly left your past behind." The implied ultimatum hung in the air. Jin stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm, fighting the old instincts that whispered dangerous solutions. "I believe we've covered all necessary business for today," he said. "I'll take the board's feedback under advisement. Meeting adjourned." As the board members filed out, Jin remained standing at the head of the table, his tattooed hands clenched. He had built this company from nothing, transformed himself from what he was into what he'd become. The board had legal authority in many areas, but he remained the largest individual shareholder and CEO. They couldn't force his hand directly, but they could certainly make things difficult for projects he cared about. His assistant entered after the others had left. "Your 3 o'clock appointment cancelled. Would you like me to reschedule?" "No," Jin decided. "I'm going out. Clear my calendar for the rest of the day." 30 minutes later, Jin was knocking on my apartment door. Samuel answered, looking surprised. "Hey man, Natalie's at her new job interview. She should be back soon if you want to wait." Jin had forgotten about the interview, a teaching assistant position at a local elementary school that I was excited about. "Right, of course. I'll wait if that's okay." Samuel let him in. "Everything all right? You look like you want to punch something." Jin managed a tight smile. "Just board politics. Nothing unusual." "Ah, rich people problems?" Samuel nodded sagely. "Want a beer?" The casual question made Jin laugh despite his mood. "Sure. Why not?" They settled in the living room, Samuel seemingly unintimidated by Jin's obvious tension or the visible tattoos that marked him as different. "So these board politics?" Samuel said after a few minutes. "They about my sister?" Jin looked at him sharply. "What makes you say that?" Samuel shrugged. "Not hard to figure out. You've been dating for what? A month or so? Keeping it mostly private. Then suddenly you show up in the middle of a workday looking like someone just insulted your grandmother. Doesn't take a genius." Jin sighed. "They think she's a distraction, that our relationship is generating the wrong kind of attention for the company, making people question whether I've really changed." "And what do you think?" Samuel asked directly. "I think it's none of their damn business," Jin replied with feeling, "but unfortunately, they can block a project I care about if I don't agree to their terms, which are essentially to keep Natalie out of the public eye. No official relationship status, no public appearances together." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "That's pretty messed up." "Yes, it is," Jin agreed. "So, what are you going to do?" It was the same question Jin had been asking himself since leaving the board meeting, the same kind of question that used to have very different answers in his old life. Before he could respond, they heard a key in the lock. I entered, my face lighting up when I saw Jin. "This is a nice surprise," I said, coming to kiss him. Then I noticed his expression. "What's wrong?" Samuel stood. "I just remembered I have that thing at that place." He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, leaving us alone. Once we were alone, Jin told me everything about the board meeting. I listened quietly, my expression growing more troubled. "So they're basically saying it's either me or your education project," I finally said. "They're trying to present it that way," Jin confirmed, "but it's not a choice I'm willing to make." "What options do we have?" I asked practically. Jin was struck, not for the first time, by my approach to problems. Not emotional outbursts or accusations, but immediately looking for solutions. It was one of the many things he had come to admire about me. "Several, actually," he said. "I'm still the CEO and largest shareholder. I can push back against the board, though that could create other complications. Or we could simply continue as we have been, keeping our relationship relatively private while I work on bringing individual board members around to my point of view on the education initiative." I was thoughtful. "Is there a third option?" "We could call their bluff," Jin suggested. Go public with our relationship officially. Make it clear this is not a passing interest and demonstrate that it in no way affects my ability to run the company effectively. Show them the past is truly past. That sounds intense, I said cautiously, and potentially like throwing gasoline on a fire. Jin nodded. It could be. But I'm tired of letting others dictate the terms of my life, personal or professional. I've spent years proving I've changed, and I'm not going to let them use you as leverage. I moved to sit beside him, taking his hand, my fingers tracing the edges of the tattoos on his wrist. I appreciate your willingness to fight for this, for us, but I also don't want to be the reason your important project gets derailed. Children in those countries need the educational resources you're trying to provide. So what are you suggesting? Jin asked, though he suspected he knew. Maybe option 2 is the wise path for now, I said. We continue as we have been, privately building what we have while you work on the board members individually. It's not ideal, but it's practical. Jin studied my face. You're remarkable, you know that? Most people would be either furious at the board or demanding I make some grand gesture. I smiled slightly. I've never been much for grand gestures, and being furious, while temporarily satisfying, rarely solves problems. Jin pulled me close, kissing my forehead. Have I told you lately how glad I am that you hugged the wrong man at that airport? Once or twice, I replied, my smile widening, but I don't mind hearing it again. We spent the evening discussing both the board situation and my job interview, which had gone well. As we talked, Jin found his earlier anger fading, replaced by determination. The board had underestimated him if they thought they could force his hand with thinly veiled threats, and they had severely underestimated me if they thought I was simply a distraction. Later that night, as Jin was preparing to leave, I remembered my news from the interview. Oh, and if I get the job, they want me to start next week, which means I could begin my teaching credential program in the evening. It would be part-time, but at least I'd be working toward my degree again. The joy in my voice as I talked about this possibility reminded Jin of why he had fallen for me in the first place. My genuine passion for education and helping others was so different from the calculated ambition he encountered in his business world, so different from the fear or greed he'd inspired in his former life. That's wonderful, he told me sincerely, and perfect timing. Since I'll be starting the international trip soon, we'll both be busy with meaningful work. I nodded, though my expression dimmed slightly at the reminder of his upcoming travel. When do you leave? Next Monday. Ghana first, then Kenya. I'll be gone about 2 weeks. I'll miss you, I said simply. I'll miss you too. But we'll talk every day, Jin promised. And I'll be thinking about you constantly. As he drove home that night, Jin found himself at a crossroads. The practical solution was to follow my suggestion. Continue our relationship privately while working on the board members individually. But something about that approach felt wrong, like he was allowing them to dictate terms in an area where they had no right to interfere. Like he was still letting his past define his present. By the time he reached his apartment, Jin had made a decision. He wouldn't let the board control his personal life, nor would he let them block a project that could help millions of children gain access to education. There had to be another way forward. One that didn't require sacrificing either the woman he was falling in love with or the work he believed in. What he needed was leverage. And he knew exactly where to find it. The next morning, Jin called an old friend who had covered his company for the Wall Street Journal for years. James, I think it's time for that profile piece you've been asking about, the one about our educational initiatives and corporate responsibility programs, the redemption story. The following day, a detailed article appeared highlighting Jin's company's commitment to education in developing markets. It included quotes from several major investors praising the company's forward-thinking approach to market development and social responsibility. It also featured a candid discussion of Jin's past and his transformation, positioning the education initiative as proof of genuine change. Without directly addressing the board's concerns, Jin had effectively created public momentum for the very initiative they were threatening to block. When his assistant informed him that several board members had called requesting meetings, Jin smiled. Sometimes the best way to win wasn't direct confrontation, but changing the battlefield entirely. Something he'd learned in his former life that still applied in this one. What he didn't know was that while he was outmaneuvering the board, other forces were at work that would soon test his relationship with me in ways neither of us could anticipate. The first week of Jin's international trip passed quickly for both of us. I started my new position as a teaching assistant and enrolled in evening classes for my teaching credential. Jin spent his days in meetings with education ministers and local school officials in Ghana, working to design technology solutions that would actually serve their specific needs. We spoke daily by video call, sharing the details of our days and growing closer despite the physical distance. I loved seeing the excitement in Jin's eyes as he talked about the project, while he enjoyed hearing my stories about the children in my classroom and my renewed progress toward my teaching degree. The kids are amazing, I told him during one call. There's this one boy, Damon, who struggled so much at the beginning of the year. Today he read an entire paragraph by himself. You should have seen his face when he realized what he'd accomplished. Jin smiled, loving the way my whole face lit up when I talked about teaching. That sounds incredible. You're making a real difference there. It's just the beginning, I replied. How are things going with the Ghana project? Better than expected. We've identified 4 schools for the initial pilot. The local officials are fully on board. Jin's expression grew more serious. The board has grudgingly approved the first phase funding after that article came out. I think they realized blocking it would create more negative publicity than they wanted to deal with. That's great news, I said sincerely. I knew you'd find a way. Our conversations continued like this throughout the first week, both enthusiastic about our work while missing each other's physical presence. But as Jin moved on to Kenya and his schedule became more demanding, the time difference made connecting more difficult. Calls became shorter, sometimes missed altogether, and replaced with brief text messages. By the end of the second week, a subtle distance had begun to grow between us, not emotional so much as practical. Our lives were moving in different directions, both meaningful but increasingly separate. Meanwhile, I noticed something concerning. Despite our attempts to keep our relationship private, photographers occasionally appeared outside my apartment building or workplace. I tried to ignore them, but their presence was a constant reminder of the public interest in my connection to Jin. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, I collapsed onto my couch and opened my laptop to check my email. A message from an unfamiliar address caught my attention. The subject line read simply, "What you should know about Jin Kang." Against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside was a collection of links to old news articles and social media posts about Jin's past. Not just business dealings, but details about his time in organized crime, violence, intimidation, the criminal empire he'd supposedly left behind. The message concluded with, "He has a pattern, gets involved, makes promises, then reverts to old ways when things get difficult. Just thought you should know what you're getting into. Those tattoos aren't just decoration." The email was anonymous, but I had my suspicions about who might have sent it. I closed the laptop, troubled despite myself. I had known about Jin's past in general terms, but seeing the specifics laid out was different. The seed of uncertainty had been planted. My phone buzzed with a text from Jin. "Sorry I missed our call again. Emergency meeting ran late. Talk tomorrow?" I stared at the message, suddenly feeling the full weight of the gap between our worlds. While I was grading papers and helping children learn to read, he was in meetings that could affect thousands of lives and millions of dollars. And somewhere in his past were things I couldn't fully understand, marked permanently on his skin. "No problem. Tomorrow works," I texted back, keeping it light. But that night, I found myself unable to sleep, my mind replaying both the anonymous email's warnings and Ji-yeon's visit weeks earlier. Had I been naive to think this relationship could work? Was I setting myself up for heartbreak by believing someone with Jin's past could truly change? The next day, Samuel found me distracted during our usual Sunday breakfast. "Earth to Natalie," he said, waving a hand in front of my face. "You haven't heard a word I've said." "Sorry," I sighed. "Just tired." Samuel studied my face. "This isn't about those photographers outside, is it? Or is it about Jin being away?" "Both?" "Neither." I pushed my food around my plate. "I got this email." After I explained about the anonymous message, Samuel's expression hardened. "That's messed up. Sounds like someone's trying to sabotage your relationship." "Maybe," I conceded. "Or maybe they're trying to warn me." "Do you really believe that?" Samuel asked incredulously. "After everything Jin has done for our family? The way he looks at you?" I shook my head. "I don't know what to believe. That's the problem. Our lives are so different, Sam. He's literally on another continent right now making decisions that will affect thousands of people. And I'm here trying to help one child at a time learn to read. Plus, his past. Those tattoos are reminders of things I can barely imagine. Both those things matter, Samuel pointed out, just in different ways. And his past is past. He's not hiding it. But for how long will someone like him find my world interesting? I asked. What happens when the novelty wears off? Or when old patterns resurface? Samuel leaned back, considering his sister carefully. I think you're looking for reasons to push him away before he can hurt you. But from what I've seen, Jin isn't like other guys. He actually cares about the same things you do. Education, making a difference, and he's honest about where he came from. I knew my brother had a point, but the distance, both physical and circumstantial, was making my doubts harder to ignore. That evening, when Jin called as promised, I found myself holding back slightly, measuring my words. He noticed immediately. Is everything okay? He asked, his face concerned even through the video screen. You seem distant. I hesitated, then decided on honesty. I got an anonymous email yesterday. About your past. With details and suggestions that you have a pattern of reverting. Jin's expression darkened. That's completely inappropriate. Do you have any idea who sent it? I have suspicions, I admitted. But that's not the point. The point is it made me wonder if I really know what I'm getting into. If those tattoos are just decoration or warnings I should heed. And what do you think? Jin asked quietly. I think I don't know what to think, I replied honestly. We've only known each other a few months. You're traveling the world doing amazing work, meeting incredible people. I'm in a classroom helping kids sound out words. It's not hard to imagine you eventually realizing we're too different, or that old habits are hard to break. Jin was silent for a long moment. Do you remember what I told you that first night at the gala? About why I was drawn to you? I nodded slightly. Because you saw me as a person, not a fortune or a threat or a past I can't change. Because you're genuine in a way few people in my life have ever been. Jin leaned closer to the camera. Yes. Our day-to-day lives look different. Yes. I have a past I'm not proud of, marked on my skin so I never forget. But the things that matter to us, education, making a difference, family, those align perfectly. And as for reverting, he smiled slightly. Natalie, every conversation with you reminds me why I chose to change. I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to. His words eased some of my anxiety, but not all of it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let an anonymous email get to me. No, I'm glad you told me, Jin said. We promised honesty, remember? That includes sharing our doubts and concerns. After we ended the call, I felt somewhat reassured. But the next morning, I opened my social media to find I had been tagged in dozens of posts overnight. Someone had leaked photos of me from college. Nothing scandalous, just normal party pictures of me having fun with friends. But they were being shared with captions suggesting I was a gold digger who had targeted Jin Kang despite knowing his dangerous past. Horrified, I immediately closed the app. My phone began ringing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize, reporters, most likely, wanting comments on the photos. I turned off my phone entirely, feeling sick. When I arrived at work, the principal called me into his office. Miss Johnson, he began awkwardly, I need to address the situation that's developing on social media. Those photos are from years ago, I explained. They're just normal college pictures being taken completely out of context. I understand that, the principal assured me, but we have a very strict policy about staff social media presence, especially for those working with younger children. Parents are already calling with concerns, some about the photos, others about your connection to someone with Mr. Kang's reputation. I felt my heart sinking. What are you saying? I'm not saying anything definitive at this point, he replied carefully. But the school board has requested a meeting to discuss the situation. Until then, we think it would be best if you took a few days of leave. It was happening again. My personal life affecting my professional opportunities. I left the school feeling numb, uncertain how things had spiraled so quickly. Unable to reach Jin due to his meeting schedule, I sent a brief text explaining the situation. His response came hours later. This is unacceptable. I'm having my legal team look into who leaked those photos. They'll also contact the school board to clarify the situation. While I appreciated his support, something about his response troubled me. It felt like he was treating this as a problem to be solved with money and lawyers, rather than understanding the emotional impact on me. When we finally connected by video that evening, Jin was clearly angry. My security team believes the photo leak and the anonymous email came from the same source, he said. We're closing in on who's responsible. Does it really matter who did it? I asked tiredly. The damage is done. I've been asked to take leave from a job I just started. People are calling me a gold digger online, and others are saying I'm naive for getting involved with someone with your past. Of course it matters, Jin insisted. Whoever did this needs to be held accountable. What I need right now isn't accountability, Jin, I said, my voice breaking slightly. It's understanding. My life is being turned upside down because of our relationship, and you're thousands of miles away dealing with it like a business problem. Jin's expression softened immediately. You're right. I'm sorry, I hate that you're going through this because of me, because of who I was. It's not because of you, I clarified. It's because of who you are in the world. There's a difference. They were both quiet for a moment, the reality of our situation hanging between us. I can come back early, Jin finally offered. The most critical meetings are done. My team can handle the rest. I was tempted to say yes, to ask him to return and help me navigate this storm. But I knew that would be selfish. No, I said firmly. The work you're doing there is too important. I can handle this. Are you sure? Jin pressed, clearly concerned. I'm sure, I nodded, though I felt anything but certain. We just need to figure out a better way forward when you get back, one that doesn't keep disrupting both our lives. After we ended the call, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling the full weight of the challenges we faced. It wasn't just about different backgrounds or lifestyles anymore. It was about the practical reality of dating someone whose very name attracted attention and scrutiny I had never wanted, whose past would always be part of the equation. The next day brought more complications. When Samuel arrived home from classes, he was unusually quiet. What's wrong? I asked. Someone at school recognized me as the billionaire's girlfriend's brother. He admitted reluctantly. They started asking all these questions about you and Jin, about our family, about Mom's health, about Jin's past. I felt a fresh wave of dismay. Now the unwanted attention was affecting my brother too. I'm so sorry, Sam. He shrugged, trying to downplay it. It's not your fault. People are just nosy. I told them to mind their own business. But the incident added to my growing sense that our relationship was creating ripple effects neither Jin nor I had fully anticipated. That evening, Esther joined us for dinner, looking stronger than she had in weeks. Her treatments were working, the doctors had confirmed, and her prognosis was increasingly positive. I've been thinking, she said as we ate. Once I'm fully recovered, I might look for a part-time job again. Nothing too demanding, but something to help with expenses. Mom, you don't need to worry about money, I assured her. Between my job? I stopped, remembering I was currently on leave. Well, between our resources we're managing. Esther gave me a knowing look. Is that why you've been checking the mail before I can see it? To hide the bills? Caught. I sighed. Despite Jin paying off the medical debt, other expenses had been accumulating while my income was inconsistent. It's temporary, I insisted. Once things settle down with Jin, you mean? Esther said gently. Sweetheart, I see how this relationship is affecting you. The stress, the public attention, the job complications, the questions about his past. It's worth it, I said automatically. Esther reached across the table to take my hand. Is it? You've always put others first. Me, Samuel, your students. But it's okay to consider what's best for you too. Not just what you're willing to endure for someone else. The word endure struck me deeply. Was I enduring rather than enjoying this relationship now? The beginning had been magical, unexpected, and exciting. But reality had set in quickly, bringing complications I hadn't been prepared for. Later that night, unable to sleep, I made a decision. I needed space to think clearly, away from the daily reminders of how my life had changed since meeting Jin. I needed to determine whether what we had could truly work long-term, or if we were simply prolonging the inevitable realization that our worlds and our pasts were too different to merge successfully. I sent Jin a message. We need to talk when you get back. Until then, I think I need some space to think about everything that's happening. I care about you deeply, but I'm not sure this is working for either of us. Jin's response came quickly despite the time difference. I understand. I'll be back in 3 days. Whatever you're feeling, Whatever concerns you have, we can work through them together. I'm not giving up on us. Natalie. His certainty should have been reassuring. Instead, it made me wonder if he truly understood the reality of our situation. Could determination and good intentions overcome the practical challenges we faced? Could someone with his past ever truly leave it behind? Or were we just postponing an inevitable goodbye? As I finally drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that the next few days would determine not just the future of our relationship, but the direction of my entire life. 3 days felt like an eternity as I waited for Jin to return. I used the time to seriously consider what I wanted, not just for our relationship, but for my life more broadly. The teaching position remained in limbo. The school board would meet the following week to make a final decision. Meanwhile, I focused on my credential coursework and spent time with my family, deliberately avoiding social media and news. On the day of Jin's return, I received an unexpected call from a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Natalie Johnson? A woman's crisp voice asked. Yes? This is Victoria Winters from the Chronicle. I'd like to offer you an opportunity to tell your side of the story before we publish our piece tomorrow. My stomach tightened. What piece? Our investigation into your relationship with Jin Kang, the reporter explained, her tone professionally pleasant. We've uncovered some interesting information about the timing of your supposed chance meeting at the airport. What are you talking about? I asked, genuinely confused. Security footage shows you waiting in that specific area for over 30 minutes before Mr. Kang's arrival. And your brother was nowhere nearby, contrary to your story about mistaking Mr. Kang for him. I felt like the floor was dropping beneath me. That's not true. My brother was there. He just arrived from a different direction than I expected. We also have sources suggesting you researched Mr. Kang extensively before the encounter, the reporter continued, ignoring my denial. Including his travel schedule, his business interests, and even his criminal history. This is completely false, I said firmly, anger replacing my initial shock. Who are these sources? What would I possibly gain from orchestrating such an elaborate scheme? Well, your mother's medical bills have been paid off for one thing, Victoria replied smoothly. And you've gained access to social circles you couldn't have entered otherwise. Some might say you deliberately targeted someone with Mr. Kang's past, knowing he would be eager to prove he's changed. I was speechless with outrage. Before I could formulate a response, the reporter continued. I'm offering you a chance to provide your perspective, Miss Johnson. Otherwise, we'll proceed with the information we have. Which is nothing but lies, I finally managed. I have no comment on your fictitious story. I hung up, hands shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Someone was deliberately trying to destroy my relationship with Jin by painting me as a calculating gold digger. The question was, who would benefit from such a portrayal? My phone rang again almost immediately. This time it was Jin. I just landed, he said when I answered. Can I come see you? Despite my turmoil over the reporter's call, I felt a wave of relief at the sound of his voice. Yes, there's something I need to tell you about. An hour later, Jin arrived at my apartment, looking tired from travel but happy to see me. He pulled me into a tight embrace, which I returned instinctively, drawing comfort from his solid presence, the familiar scent of his cologne, the strength in his tattooed arms. I missed you, he said simply. I missed you too, I stepped back. But we need to talk. I told him about the reporter's call and the false narrative being constructed. Jin listened, his expression growing increasingly troubled. I'll have my legal team contact the Chronicle immediately, he said when I finished. This is defamation, plain and simple. But who would do this? I asked. Who would benefit from making me look like I tricked you? Jin was silent for a moment, clearly thinking. Several possibilities come to mind. Business rivals looking to distract me. Board members who disapprove of our relationship. Former associates from my past who might see this as leverage. He didn't explicitly mention Ji Yan, but the implication was clear. It doesn't matter who's behind it, I said tiredly. What matters is that it's happening, and it's affecting both of us. This is exactly why I asked for space to think. These past months have been a roller coaster. Some of the happiest moments of my life, but also some of the most stressful. Jin moved to sit beside me on the couch, taking my hand. I know it's been difficult, but we can get through this together. The article, the photos, the job complications, these are all temporary problems with solutions. That's how you see everything, isn't it? I observed, not unkindly. as problems with solutions, business challenges to overcome. Isn't that a good approach? Jin asked, looking slightly confused. Sometimes, I acknowledged, but relationships aren't business deals, Jin. They're messy and complicated, especially when the people involved come from such different worlds, when one of them has a past that will never fully go away. Jin was quiet for a moment, considering my words. What are you saying, Natalie? Are you ending this? The directness of his question caught me off guard. I don't know, I admitted honestly. Part of me thinks that might be the sensible choice. But another part? I looked at him. Really looked at the man who had unexpectedly entered my life just a few months ago. Despite all the complications, my feelings for him had only deepened. Despite the tattoos that marked his past, despite the whispers that followed him, I had come to see the person he was trying to become. Another part can't imagine not having you in my life, I finally said. Relief washed over Jin's face. Then let's focus on that part. Everything else, we can figure out together. Before I could respond, my phone rang again. It was Samuel. Sis, turn on the news. Channel 8 now. Alarmed by the urgency in my brother's voice, I grabbed the remote and switched on the small television. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Exclusive, Jin Kang accused of improper business practices. The reporter on screen was speaking earnestly. Allegations include manipulation of stock prices before major announcements and improper relationships with overseas officials during the recent educational technology expansion. Jin stared at the screen in shock. This is completely false, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Every aspect of our international educational initiative has been conducted with full transparency and compliance. The news segment continued, featuring an interview with a former company insider whose face was blurred and voice disguised. The figure claimed to have documentation proving Jin had engaged in questionable business practices to secure foreign contracts, and had used company resources for personal ventures, specifically mentioning financing his girlfriend's family's expenses. That's about my mother's medical bills, I realized, horrified. They're twisting what you did out of kindness into something corrupt. Jin was already on his phone, calling his chief legal officer. Their conversation was brief and intense, with Jin giving clear directions for an immediate response to the allegations. After hanging up, he turned to me, his expression grim. This isn't a coincidence. The hit piece on you, now this attack on me. They're coordinated. But why? What would anyone gain from all this? Jin paced the small living room, thinking. The timing is significant. Our board meets next week to finalize approval for the full international education initiative. If my reputation is damaged, if there are questions about my judgment or ethics, or if it looks like I'm reverting to old patterns, they could delay or even cancel the project. So this is about business after all, I said, the pieces falling into place. Someone is using our relationship as leverage against your company's plans. Jin nodded slowly. It appears that way, and I think I know who. Before he could elaborate, there was a sharp knock at the door. I opened it to find a courier with a thick envelope. Delivery for Jin Kang, the man said, holding out an electronic signature pad. Jin signed for the package with a frown. Inside was a single folder containing documents and what appeared to be photographs. As he examined the contents, his expression changed from confusion to cold anger, the kind that reminded me of who he used to be. What is it? I asked, concerned. Evidence, Jin said grimly, showing me financial records. Harold Whitman, my most vocal opponent on the board, has been secretly investing in a rival company developing similar educational technology. If our initiative succeeds, his investment fails. He showed me photographs of Whitman meeting with the editor-in-chief of the Chronicle 3 days ago. So he's behind all this, I said, stunned. The anonymous email, the photo leak, the false stories about both of us. It appears so, Jin continued examining the documents. There's a note here too, from Jian, surprisingly enough. I couldn't hide my surprise as Jin showed me the note. It read simply, I may not approve of your relationship choices, but corporate sabotage crosses a line. Use this however you need to. I don't understand, I said. I thought she might be behind some of this. Jian can be calculating and manipulative, Jin admitted, but she's always had a strong sense of business ethics. And despite our history, she knows how much this educational initiative means to me, how much proving I've changed means to me. I sat down heavily, trying to process this latest development. So what happens now? Jin's phone buzzed with a series of messages, his team responding to the crisis. Now we fight back, he said, a new determination in his voice, with the truth. The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Jin mobilized his legal and PR teams to address both the false allegations against him and the fabricated story about me. With Ji-yeon's evidence, they were able to trace most of the attacks back to proxies working for Harold Whitman. By the following evening, the narrative had begun to shift. The Chronicle published a retraction of their planned story about me, acknowledging their source had provided unverifiable information. The business news channels were now reporting on the apparent conflict of interest within Jin's board, with several major shareholders publicly supporting him. I watched it all unfold with a strange sense of detachment. While relieved that the false accusations were being addressed, I couldn't shake the feeling that this episode revealed something fundamental about what a relationship with Jin would always entail: scrutiny, politics, and public battles I had never wanted to fight. When Jin finally returned to my apartment after a day of emergency meetings, he looked exhausted but triumphant. Whitman has resigned from the board, he announced. 3 other members who supported him have apologized and pledged to approve the educational initiative. We've won. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. I'm happy for you, Jin. I know how important this project is. Jin studied my face. But? I took a deep breath. But this whole situation has made me realize something important. This is your world. Corporate politics, media battles, public scrutiny. You navigate it brilliantly because you've had to learn how, both in your business life and before that. I haven't, and I'm not sure I want to. What are you saying? Jin asked quietly. I'm saying I need to be honest with myself and with you about whether I can handle being part of your life long term. Not just the good parts, but all of it. The photographers, the rumors, the business rivals using me to get to you. The constant reminders of your past. Jin moved closer, taking my hands in his tattooed fingers gentle on mine. Natalie, I can protect you from most of that. With time, the media interest will fade. We can be more careful, more private. But that's just it, I replied gently. I don't want to live carefully. I don't want to constantly wonder if something I say or do will be twisted and used against you. I want a normal life, focusing on teaching and my family. And you. I looked at his hands, the ink marking his transformation. You'll never have that kind of normal. Your past will always be part of you. The hurt in Jin's eyes was evident despite his attempt to hide it. You think I can't change? That I'll always be defined by what I was? No, I said quickly. I've seen you change. But that doesn't mean the world will let you forget. It doesn't mean every relationship you have won't be colored by it. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our conversation hanging between us. Finally, Jin spoke again. What about your mother's treatments? Your teaching credential program? I know money isn't everything, but my support has made those things possible. The question stung, though I knew he hadn't meant it as manipulation. We managed before I met you, I said quietly. We'll find a way to manage again if necessary. Jin looked genuinely distressed. I didn't mean it like that. I'm not trying to use financial support as leverage. I want to help. I want to be part of your life, Natalie. All of it. The struggles and the joys. I know, I said softly. And that's what makes this so hard. Outside, rain had begun to fall, pattering against the windows. In the small apartment, 2 people from vastly different worlds sat together, facing a decision that would change both their lives. I'm not giving up, Jin finally said. Not unless you tell me definitively that's what you want, but I will give you the space you asked for. Time to decide if what we have is worth fighting for. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. Jin stood, clearly reluctant to leave but respecting my need for space. At the door, he turned back to me. For what it's worth, he said, meeting you was the best thing that's happened to me in years. Whether you believe it or not, you've changed me, Natalie. You've reminded me what really matters. You've made me believe I could truly leave my past behind. After he left, I sat alone in the quiet apartment, tears finally flowing freely. The rational part of my mind insisted that ending things now would be simpler, cleaner, but my heart rebelled against the idea of never seeing Jin again, never experiencing the connection we had built despite all the obstacles. As I finally went to bed, exhausted from emotional turmoil, I realized that the next day would bring the most important decision of my life, not just about a relationship, but about what kind of future I truly wanted: safe and predictable, or challenging, but potentially extraordinary. What I didn't know was that morning would bring an unexpected development that would change everything once again. I woke to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window. After the emotional turmoil of the previous day, I had slept surprisingly well, as if my subconscious had already made the decision my conscious mind was struggling with. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the city come to life below. My thoughts turned to Jin, his determination, his integrity in facing the false accusations, the way he had respected my need for space despite clearly wanting to fight for our relationship. Whatever I decided, I knew I had been fortunate to know him. My phone buzzed with a text from Samuel. "Mom and I are going to the park for a walk. Join us?" The normality of the invitation was appealing after days of drama. "Be there in 30, I replied. The small neighborhood park was peaceful on Sunday morning, with families strolling along the paths and children playing on the swings. I spotted my mother and brother on a bench near the central fountain, both looking relaxed and happy. "There she is," Samuel called as I approached, "the woman of the hour." "Please tell me there isn't more news," I groaned, sitting beside them. "Not about you specifically," Esther said, handing me the morning paper, "but about Jin." The front-page business section featured a detailed exposé of Harold Whitman's conflict of interest and attempted sabotage of Jin's educational initiative. The article painted Jin as a principled CEO fighting corporate corruption, noting that his relationship with a teacher from a modest background had been weaponized in an attempt to derail his humanitarian business goals. It even mentioned his past, framing the education initiative as proof of genuine transformation. "They actually got most of it right," I said, surprised. "And they described me as a teacher rather than the airport hugger. That's progress, I guess." "Have you decided what you're going to do?" Esther asked gently. I sighed. "I've been thinking about it all night. Part of me believes ending things would be simpler for everyone. But another part loves him," Samuel suggested. The directness of the question caught me off guard. Did I love Jin? We had never used that word with each other, cautious perhaps about moving too quickly in a relationship already complicated by external factors. "I care about him deeply," I said carefully. "But love requires more than just feelings. It requires compatibility, shared values, similar goals." "Which you and Jin have," Samuel pointed out. "You both care about education, about making a difference. You're both loyal to family. You're both stubborn as hell," he added with a grin. "Samuel's right," Esther said, surprising me. "I've watched you two together. Behind all the surface differences, you connect on what truly matters. His past doesn't define him. It's part of his story, but not the whole story." "But Mom, you've seen how complicated this has been," I protested. "The media attention, the job issues, the stress, the constant reminders of his past." Esther patted my daughter's hand. "Life is always complicated, sweetheart. The question is whether what you gain is worth what you endure." She smiled slightly. "And whether you're stronger together facing those complications than you would be apart." As I considered my mother's words, a commotion near the park entrance caught our attention. A small crowd had gathered. People pointing and taking photos with their phones. "What's happening?" I asked, standing to get a better view. And then I saw him. Jin, walking through the park alone and without his usual security detail. He was dressed simply in jeans and a blue jacket, the same blue jacket he had been wearing the day we met at the airport. The coincidence couldn't be accidental. His tattooed hands were visible, and he made no effort to hide them. He spotted me and changed direction, walking purposefully toward our bench. People in the park recognized him, some taking photos, others whispering to each other. But for once, Jin seemed completely unconcerned by the attention. "I know you asked for space," he said when he reached us, slightly breathless as if he had been hurrying, "and I planned to give it to you. But then I realized something important." "What's that?" I asked, my heart racing despite myself. "That sometimes the right thing isn't the careful thing." Jin glanced around at the curious onlookers, then back to me. "I've spent years being careful, calculating risks, managing perceptions, hiding my past, trying to prove I've changed. Until you hugged me in that airport and turned everything upside down." I couldn't help smiling at the memory. It was an honest mistake. "Best mistake of my life," Jin replied with feeling. "Natalie, I don't want to be careful anymore. I don't want to hide or downplay or strategically manage our relationship to please my board or the media or anyone else. I want to be honest with the world and with you about how I feel. People had begun to gather around us, sensing that something significant was happening. Phones were raised, recording the scene. For once, I found I didn't mind the attention. "And how do you feel?" I asked softly. Jin took my hands in his tattooed fingers intertwining with mine, his eyes never leaving my face. "I love you," he said simply, his voice carrying in the quiet morning air. "I love your kindness, your intelligence, your dedication to your family and your students. I love how you challenged me to be better than I was. I love that you've never once been intimidated by my past or impressed by my money, only by the person I'm trying to become." Murmurs rippled through the growing crowd. Samuel was grinning broadly beside us while Esther watched with tears in her eyes. "I know our worlds are different," Jin continued. "I know there will be challenges. I know my past will always be part of who I am." He glanced down at his tattooed hands. "These will never go away. The whispers might never stop. But I also know that what we have is worth fighting for. So I'm standing here in public, not caring who sees or what they think, asking you to give us a real chance." I was momentarily speechless, overwhelmed by both his words and the public nature of his declaration. In that moment, I realized something important. The Jin Kang standing before me, vulnerable and honest, was far removed from the cautious businessman who had first given me his card at the airport. He had changed, just as I had. "I don't need grand gestures or public declarations," I finally said, "but I appreciate what this means for you, choosing to be open despite the risks." "That's not an answer," Jin pointed out, a hint of anxiety in his voice. I smiled, suddenly certain of my decision. "Yes," I said clearly. "Yes. I'll give us a real chance. Because I love you too." The words felt right as soon as I spoke them. True, in a way I had been denying myself. Jin's face lit up with joy, and without hesitation he pulled me into his arms and kissed me right there in the park, with dozens of strangers watching and recording. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, I became aware of applause erupting around us. People were cheering, taking photos, some even wiping away tears at witnessing what appeared to be a real-life fairy tale moment. "Well, that's going to be on the internet in about 5 minutes," Samuel joked, but his eyes were warm with approval. "I don't care," Jin said, his arms still around my waist. "I'm done hiding how I feel." Esther stood, embracing both of us. "Sometimes the right path isn't the easy one," she said softly, "but that doesn't make it any less right." As the initial excitement died down and the crowd began to disperse, Jin turned to me with a more serious expression. "There's something else I wanted to talk to you about. A proposal of sorts?" "That sounds serious," I replied, suddenly nervous. "Not that kind of proposal," Jin clarified with a smile. "At least not yet. This is about your teaching career." He explained that during his trip to Kenya, he had been particularly impressed by a community school that was achieving remarkable results despite limited resources. The school's director had mentioned wanting to establish a teacher exchange program with American educators. "They're looking for someone with elementary education background to help train their teachers in new literacy methods," Jin concluded. "When they described what they needed, I immediately thought of you." I blinked in surprise. "Me? But I'm still working on my credentials." "Which you could continue online while gaining international teaching experience," Jin pointed out. "It would be a 6-month position initially, with the possibility of extension if it works well for everyone." 6 months in Kenya," I repeated, trying to process the idea. "That's a huge change." "I know," Jin acknowledged, "and if it's not something you're interested in, that's completely fine. But I thought it might be an opportunity that combines your teaching passion with a chance to make a difference on a broader scale." "And where would you be during these 6 months?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. Jin smiled. "As it happens, my company is establishing our African headquarters in Nairobi, about an hour from the school. I'll be spending significant time there over the next year as we implement the Educational Technology Initiative." Samuel laughed. "Smooth, man. Very smooth." I couldn't help laughing too. "So we'd both be in Kenya, working on separate but connected projects? Building something meaningful together but maintaining our individual professional identities?" "That's the idea," Jin confirmed. "It seemed like a potential solution to some of our challenges, a fresh start away from the media circus here. A chance to build something together in a place where my past matters less than what I'm trying to create for the future. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating, leaving everything familiar behind, taking my teaching ambitions to an international level, building a relationship with Jin in a completely new context. It was a bigger leap than I had ever contemplated. "What about Mom's treatments?" I asked, the practical concern immediately surfacing. "All arranged," Esther answered before Jin could speak. "Dr. Patel says I'm responding so well that we can space out the remaining sessions significantly. The cancer is in remission." "And I'll be here," Samuel added, squeezing his mother's shoulder. "Someone has to keep Mom out of trouble. Plus, Kenya has excellent hospitals if your mother wants to visit," Jin added. "I've already checked, and the position comes with comprehensive health insurance that would cover her if she needs treatment while visiting." I shook my head in amazement. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I've tried," Jin admitted, "but ultimately, this is your decision, your career, your path. I'm simply offering an option that might work for both of us." I looked between my mother and brother, seeing nothing but encouragement in their faces. Then I turned back to Jin, studying the man who had entered my life so unexpectedly just a few months ago. The tattoos on his hands told a story of where he'd been, but his eyes showed me where he wanted to go. "You know what? Let's do it," I said decisively. "Let's go to Kenya." The joy on Jin's face confirmed I had made the right choice. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and there would undoubtedly be many, we would face them together, stronger for the differences that had initially seemed to separate us. 6 weeks later, I stood in the international terminal of the same airport where I had first hugged Jin by mistake. My family was there to see us off, along with Jin's sister Minji, who had become an unexpected ally in navigating the media attention that had followed our public declaration of love. "Ready for this adventure?" Jin asked, taking my hand as we prepared to board. I nodded, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. Ready as I'll ever be. As we walked toward the gate, I glanced back one last time at my family. Samuel gave me a thumbs up while Esther blew a kiss, looking healthier than she had in months. The medical fund Jin had established had ensured she would receive the best possible care, and recent tests had shown the cancer was in complete remission. "You know," I said as we settled into our first-class seats, Jin's one non-negotiable luxury for the long flight. "A year ago, I never could have imagined any of this." "What part?" Jin asked, genuinely curious. "Dating a billionaire, moving to Kenya, becoming an international educator. All of it," I laughed. "But mostly finding someone who sees me so completely, who challenges me to grow beyond what I thought was possible." Jin squeezed my hand. "That goes both ways, you know. You've changed me too. Reminded me what truly matters beyond business success and wealth. Shown me that my past doesn't have to define my future." As the plane took off, carrying us toward our shared future, I thought about the strange sequence of events that had brought us together. A simple mistake, hugging the wrong man in an airport, had set in motion a journey neither of us could have anticipated. Our worlds had been so different at the start. A billionaire with a criminal past trying to redeem himself, and a struggling teaching assistant seemed like an unlikely match by any standard. But beneath the surface differences, we had found a connection based on shared values, mutual respect, and eventually love. There would still be challenges ahead. The differences in our backgrounds wouldn't magically disappear. Jin's past would always be part of his story, marked permanently on his skin. The public interest in our relationship would likely continue, and we would both need to learn and grow as we built a life together. But as I looked at Jin beside me, already talking excitedly about the school we would be visiting first in Kenya, I felt nothing but certainty. Some chances were worth taking. Some mistakes, like hugging the wrong man in an airport, turned out to be the best decisions of all. In the end, it wasn't about erasing our differences or pretending they didn't exist. It was about recognizing that sometimes the most unlikely connections could be the strongest, bridging different worlds to create something beautiful and unexpected. As the plane soared above the clouds, I leaned my head on Jin's shoulder, content in the knowledge that our story was just beginning. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The billionaire with the tattooed past and the teacher who had found him by chance, chosen by heart. And somewhere below us, in that same airport terminal where our story began, new travelers were arriving and departing, hugging loved ones, making their own mistakes, creating their own unexpected connections. Life continued its beautiful, chaotic rhythm. But for us, Everything had changed. For us, the mistake had become magic.